Hey everyone, and welcome to another Marks & Crafts figurine review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Quintessential Quintuplets Coreful Ichika Nakano Renewal version figure. Now, if you'll remember my previous Coreful Ichika review, it was of the original school uniform series, and they were a pretty standard figure. They were the first one in the line, and the Coreful line was pretty new at that point. And yeah, it was okay. It wasn't great. Her facial expression was amazing, and future Coreful Quintessential figures were fantastic. So I think that the first Coreful release and the future Coreful releases sort of prompted Taito to re-examine the figure line that they had and sort of reissue them in different poses, but also improved figures. Now, the Ichika was the one that needed improvement the most. All of the other ones are sort of like slight redesigns or pose changes, nothing too major, but the Ichika's one has been massively overhauled, and that's what I've got here today. So this is the Ichika Nakano Renewal Coreful figure. So let's get right into it. So straight out of the box, this is what you get. It comes in two pieces like all the other Corefuls, which is the figure and the base. It's actually kind of funny because I will be comparing the first release with this one later. The pegs on the base are pretty much identical, which is kind of funny. But as you can see, this figure definitely shows off Ichika in probably a better light, because the previous one had her arms crossed over her chest. It was sort of hard to tell her proportions, and I know this sounds like a little bit creepy, but like all of the quintuplets have very generous proportions, and it looked a bit weird having the previous releases Ichika lined up with the others because it didn't quite look like her. Facial expression was absolutely perfect. I don't know how they nailed it, but they did for prize figures. But yeah, they pulled off pretty good. The colors were good and everything like that. It's just it didn't really scream Ichika. But we've got this one here, and even though she's my least favorite quintuplet, she does make very good figures, and her aesthetic is great. Now, once again, Coreful have absolutely nailed the face. I don't know how a prize figure company can pull it off this consistently, but yeah, they really do make good faces. The only problem with prize figures is the amount of paint errors and things like that you are most likely going to get, and it's a bit of a gamble on if they'll be on the front of the figure or somewhere that it doesn't bother you. And in this Renewal's case, unfortunately, there's a paint error right on the top of her head here. See that little black spot there? Yeah, that doesn't rub off, which is a bit of a shame. I don't know how I'm going to fix that. But we'll see. Otherwise, the face sculpt is fantastic. I really love the sculpted in mouth detail. Getting in even closer, her eyes look fantastic, and I love the little blush under the eyes. It's really screams quintuplets because they've got very unique facial features, and I like that they've actually captured the face in these, whereas the first release of the pop-up parades didn't really do that. But unfortunately, now that we have gone a bit closer, you can see that the white on the jacket isn't super clean, but it's a prize figure. You don't pay much for these, and you get what you pay for. Otherwise, the ruffles in the clothes are really nice. Really like the textured in detail, like even her jumper that's tied around her waist has got little texture. And yeah, the colors are vibrant, really pop, and looks really nice. And for the most part, they did a matte finish on the skin and makes it look good. And one of the other big differences in this figure compared to the other one is the base. Now, the bases on the first Corefuls were clear and had a lot of little like sort of decal or painted on details, and it also had the quintuplet's number and name. In this case, this does still have the number and name, and the base is semi-transparent, but it's mostly sort of white. Like whatever you put it on, you're not really going to notice if it's transparent or not, but you do lose a bit of that detail, at least on camera. I don't know, the yellow on white's not really that great, but otherwise it is a very good figure. There's no real issues that I have with it, besides the paint error on the back of, well, on the top of the head. The major thing is that I feel like this figure reads as Ichika, whereas I didn't feel like the first release really read like her that much. The face was fantastic, and it's just like, from a distance it was fine and things like that. It just, there's just something off about it, and I think it was the pose. But speaking of that original figure, let's do comparison. Now I've got the original figure on the right and the new figure on the left, and you can see just how much these figures have changed. And when you sort of look at the bottom half of the figure, they are quite similar. I think that the bottom half is pretty much exactly the same, just maybe slight molding differences, but the top half is pretty much completely reworked, which is good. They really changed the feel of the figure if you just change that one part. And that's probably because they had to sculpt in so much more. But yeah, you can see the bases look completely different, and they really just have a completely different shelf presence and silhouette because of the pose changes. And also because the sort of ideal viewing angle for the Ichikas are slightly different. They would look different if they were next to each other, even though they're mostly the same figure. So just going in for a closer look, you can see the face sculpts. They actually are probably the same face sculpt, but probably a little more detail was put in the latest one. Like, I think there's a little more texturing. They don't look as glossy, and the pink looks a little bit more bright, if that makes sense. And you can sort of tell that the hair gets a little bit clear at the ends on the new figure compared to the old one. But yeah, it seems like the major change was the torso. Everything else was copied or like reused, and it gives just a completely different feel. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this figure, just because like there's not much to say about it. It's just an improvement over the other one, and it matches with the later figures in that same original Coreful line better. They are renewing every single one of the sisters in this line, some more drastic than others. I believe that Ichika's is the most drastic change though. So I will most likely be looking at all of them, but I really just wanted to replace the Ichika because I didn't like the original that much. But it does bother me that the bases will be different, so they won't match up that great, so you kind of need the renewal lines. Really depends on how OCD you are about that sort of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you all next time.